Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rise Above Justice Movement, the podcast. My name is Zachary Mallory, and I am the host and the founder of the Rise Above Justice Movement and the Rise Above Justice Movement, the podcast. All right, so today is another edition to the candidate series that we are doing, where we're interviewing and highlighting progressive candidates running across the country at all levels of government, all levels of office, because every single election matters. So today, I am joined by Mike, who's running for Congressional District 6 in Tennessee. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Zachary, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. And we've interviewed a couple people based in Tennessee, and my co-founder is based in Nashville, Tennessee.
That's
And
right.
she's Gwen Levy of Gwen Levy and the Breakdown. She's not able to be here today, but just a quick shout out to Gwen. My incredible co-founder has been literally a matriarch in this movement, and she is the backbone of it. And I am grateful. And I'm also grateful to sit down and talk to you because you're running on a platform that represents the working families in Tennessee's 6th congressional district. Now,
That's right.
and I'm reading directly off your website, you know, while billionaires buy policies behind closed doors, all while our schools are underfunded, our healthcare system is broken, and our rights are being auctioned off one vote at a time. Mike is not a career politician, not backed by corporate donors or political machines. You are running this campaign the only way that you know how: transparency, honesty, and a promise to show up for the little guy. We need representation that listens, not lectures, serves, and not sells out. You are not running to represent one side of the aisle. You're running to represent every single person in this district who's been ignored, written off, or told to wait their turn. Mike,
That's right.
whatever I tell you, this is hands down the best statement that I've seen to this point,
Oh, I love it.
because it's absolutely true. Because billionaires, these tech bros, AI data centers, all of it
Yeah.
is literally driving up the cost of living for the working class, for the
Mhm.
disabled communities, for other marginalized communities. Meanwhile, our rights are being, like you said, steamrolled literally out of here, that have been the foundation of this country for literally decades. So let's dive into it. I kind of gave a little bit about, why you're running, but if you
Mm.
want to walk us through more of like your background, more of your story, where you begin, and just kind of how it ties into where you are now, and why it's important for progressive voices to run across the country to represent the people and not the top 1%.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again for this opportunity. I'm a Navy veteran. I enlisted out of high school, but not before I worked at Purdue Chicken. Right, the easily the worst job I've ever had. Kind of the catalyst that that drove me into the Navy, quite honestly. But um, joining the Navy was the best thing that could have happened to me. I received an ROTC scholarship, so I got to go to Vanderbilt University and get an engineering degree. And it was an amazing opportunity. And I got out of the Navy in 2009 and worked for the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority, as an energy efficiency contractor. And that was a great job, but I traveled way too much, and my wife and we had two young sons at the time. So I decided to have a slight change of pace and took a 90-degree turn and became a Tennessee State Park Ranger. And it's not hyperbole. I gave up 80% of my salary as an engineer to come and be a park ranger, but my quality of life was substantially better. And I loved that job. I worked at a park south of Nashville, and then transferred to the Cumberland Trail, which is in the Cumberland Mountains in East Tennessee. I was literally blazing trail and building trail in the middle of the backwoods. So public service is, pretty critical to me. Um, I left state parks and went to work for a community college here as their veteran service coordinator. So I helped other vets use their GI Bills and their benefits. And while I was there, I applied for a presidential management fellowship, which I had never heard of. I'm assuming you had never heard of it. Probably your listeners had never heard of it. Um, just a real quick on the presidential management fellowship. It was established in 1976 to attract high performers from the civilian world to come and work for the federal government. So I had gotten my master's degree from Tennessee Tech here in Putnam County, Tennessee. And that was one of the qualifications. You had to have an advanced degree within 2 years. So I had to take an exam and qualify to be a finalist, and then have an interview panel, which was super awkward. I couldn't divulge anything about myself, so it was a very weird interview. But anyhow, there were over 10,000 applicants, and they picked 856 of us. So I thought I was set. This is 2023. Biden's in office. The Inflation Reduction Act is rolling along. The bipartisan infrastructure law is rolling along. And I saw the writing on the wall when Project 2025 came out. I worked, excuse me, I worked for NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And I worked on their Climate Resilience Regional Challenge. It was a $575 million grant program for coastal communities to get ahead of climate change. And everything was going so well. We had narrowed this down from over 1,000 applicants down to 21, and then the administration change happened. And just for reference, my parents are divorced, but they're both MAGA. And I called my dad and I said, Dad, this Project 2025 calls for disbanding the agency that I work for. You know this, right? And his answer was, I don't think he knows anything about that, which is what he had told everyone. So January of 2025, I had a meeting with my supervisors, and they let me know that they would not be able to continue my position moving forward, which was just a gut punch. I was paid through Inflation Reduction Act funds, and they were actively being taken away. So I scrambled, and I went to work for the Department of State for a rotation. And when that rotation ended, I went to the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, and I was driving an hour and a half one way every day just to meet the return to office mandate that Trump had put in. February 17th of that same year, with an executive order, Trump ended the Presidential Management Fellowship. And just, again, to touch on that, it's the Presidential Management Fellowship, right? So this is his own fellowship. And they had already paid me and trained me for 18 of 24 months. It was a 2-year fellowship. The conversion rate at the end of this fellowship was 98%, right? It was pretty much a given that if you completed the Presidential Management Fellowship, you were going to convert to a full-time position in an agency. And once he ended it, all bets were off. So I was freaking out. I've got 4 children. I'm married, 2 dogs, right? A mortgage, car payments. So I called my representative, which is what we're told to do as citizens. And, this isn't hyperbole. This isn't Trump speak. I called his offices every day, multiple times a day. He's got an office in Cookeville, in Gallatin, and then Washington, D.C. And that man never called me back. Never answered his phone, obviously. Never called me back. and that was just unacceptable to me. So April 19th was my last day as a federal employee. I was part of the Doge wave that came through and cut all the probationary employees. And I just decided I'll do it myself. I'll just do this myself. I am a public servant. I'm knowledgeable. I have advanced degrees. I know this area. Tennessee's 6th congressional district is 19 counties. It's huge. It's a substantial portion of Tennessee. And because of gerrymandering, part of Davidson County, our our capital, Nashville, is in Tennessee's 6th district. The GOP, the state GOP in 2022 split it into 3 different pieces because it was a Democratic stronghold. And their intention, I'm assuming, was to dilute with urban red counties, that part of Davidson County. But what they inadvertently did was give all of us a Democratic stronghold in our territories. So with this district, I I think I could win with just Davidson County voting me in, which would be substantial. But like I said, it's 19 different counties, and John Rose is the congressman that I had called. He is my current congressman. He's my current representative. But he decided he wants to run for governor of Tennessee. Our governor Bill Lee is stepping down, and so this is very much an open seat. And obviously, I'm not a polished politician, and I say that I mean that as a compliment, because my view of politicians is that they are bought and paid for, and that they are untrustworthy, and that is not me. My allegiance is not to a pack or to an organization. My allegiance is to the constituents and the citizens of Tennessee's 6th congressional district. And public service is at the heart of everything I do. I'm also a conservationist, land conservationist. My full-time job right now, outside of being a congressional candidate, is I run a nonprofit called The Tranquil Path, and it's twofold. I'm a big advocate for mental health also. So I am a certified mindfulness instructor. So I teach mindfulness meditation. And I also used my nonprofit to acquire tax delinquent properties, which isn't as exciting as it might sound. But the intention is to find these properties that are in the rears on taxes and purchase them for pennies on the dollar, and then just hold them in conservation. No one can build on it. I return it to its natural wild state. And I'm an advocate for green spaces, but that's me in a nutshell. I've been doing this since last April, so a little over a year, which is kind of surreal. I have an amazing team of volunteers behind me. Our social media team is on top of it. I'm 47 years old, and I got TikTok for the first time last year, and I see the merit in it. I was hesitant to get on TikTok because I'd gone through Periscope and Vine and all of these other apps, right? So I thought this was just going to be a one-hit wonder like they were. But I'm on TikTok, I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I'm not on Twitter because it seems like if Nazis are at the party that you're at a Nazi party. And there seems to be a ton of that on Twitter. But that's me in a nutshell, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for, the backstory and the background on it. And, your next governor, I'm watching this very closely because
Sure.
I am based in Kansas, as many people on this podcast are aware of. But like I said, my co-founder is based in Tennessee, and we're obviously rooting for Jerry Green.
That's
Is right. One that we're absolutely rooting for, which will be on the podcast later next month.
Oh,
and
awesome.
I'm excited to sit down and talk to her because I know she's a badass human being. I know that she's done a ton of work in the state of Tennessee. And unlike the current incumbent, who is now, like you said, running for governor, she fights for people and not corporations, not for anybody
Private
that
prisons.
is, yeah. And there's so much to say about John, but that's
there's a lot to say about John.
That's not the focus. Yeah. The focus is on you. Right. And let's dive in and talk about affordability. So, thinking about the 6th congressional district, what are some of those concerns around affordability that you are hearing if you've been out like talking to people, if you've been out canvassing or phone banking? What are some of the concerns that you're hearing as far as affordability goes? And we'll go through your platform and ask like the similar question over like each talking point. But what are some of those concerns that you were hearing in regards of affordability in your district?
Yeah, I think affordability is at the forefront of everyone's mind, and rightfully so. I mean, it just go to the gas station. But we 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 don't have a lot of manufacturing. We don't have a lot of opportunities and a lot of economic growth. Like I said, the sixth district is 19 counties. Most of them are rural. Most of them are not Davidson County, right? So that juxtaposition of, you have urban Davidson County and then rural Scott County, where it's all agricultural. Everywhere I go consistently, people tell me they can't afford to live, and it's people are making the decision between paying rent and buying groceries this month. My son lives my oldest son. He's 26. He lives in East Nashville, which is part of my district, and he's married. Him and his wife both work full time, and they can barely afford rent and food. And it's not like they have frivolous bills or they're going out just to the casino every night. They are trying to survive, and the system is not geared towards that. Let alone they are never going to have an opportunity to buy a home, most likely. So affordability, it's such a huge topic because there's so many facets to it. But the thing I want folks to take away is I am all about taxing the rich and taxing these large manufacturing facilities. Again, I'm not owned by anyone. I don't have an allegiance to a corporation or a PAC. So you better believe I'm going to make sure they pay their fair share of money. My wife and I had to pay in taxes this past year, which is insane. My wife works as a teacher's aide at a public school, and I was essentially unemployed for the majority of the year, and we had to pay in taxes, which I was happy to do. And I mean, I mean that quite honestly. I love this country, and I'm happy to support it. I just wish everyone else felt the same way, and don't just talk about it. Your actions speak so much louder than your words. Amazon, they're based out of Tennessee. They didn't pay anything in federal taxes. My son worked for Amazon for a short while, and they treated him like a commodity. I mean, and I could go on and on, but whenever we, and by we, I mean the people, are treated as profit centers, that's when the problem comes in, right? So you look at healthcare. Healthcare is right in line with affordability. I am a staunch advocate for universal basic healthcare. I had it in the military, right? If I needed a prescription, if I needed a doctor, if I needed surgery, I didn't pay out of pocket. These were essential services. It seemed absurd to me when I got out of the Navy that I would have to pay $400 a month for insurance for the chance that something would happen to my family. And then knowing that that wouldn't even cover it, right? That there would still be an out-of-pocket deductible. A phrase I say a lot is, we have the money, we don't have the values, right? So we have a coffer of money in this country. I mean, just look at this ballroom that's being built. That could easily subsidize universal basic health care. And we could do it on a state-by-state level at first, as a pilot program, but it seems absurd to me. Another thing on the affordability front is legalizing and taxing marijuana. Tennessee is an agricultural state. We have an amazing soil here. That we are farmers. That's what we're known for. And the fact that we can't grow and tax and sell marijuana or hemp, it just seems absurd to me. And I mentioned I was a state park ranger. Part of that is I was state law enforcement, which I didn't realize at the time. But so I had to go through the police academy. I had to go through a 12-week police academy. 8-week police academy. And marijuana is our number one cash crop in the state. We just don't see any revenue of it. Prohibition has never worked. All it does is create a black market. And I have seen that black market firsthand. So I am a big advocate for legalizing and taxing marijuana. It would bring so much revenue to this state. It would bring so many jobs to this state. I mentioned working for the TVA as an energy efficiency consultant. I'm a big advocate for renewable energy. I mean, that shouldn't come as a big surprise. I have cousins to this day that work in coal mines in Kentucky. So this is very much coal country around here. But who can argue with free energy from the sun, right? Windmills. I know the president's not a big fan of them, but we have windmills all over East Tennessee, and they're beautiful. They don't disrupt the scenery or anything like that. I mean, it makes me very happy to see them operating. So I would love to bring some green energy initiatives to the sixth district. I think that would bring jobs in and bring opportunity in.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your thoughts as far and well, hold on, let me backtrack here for a second.
Sure.
So Afton Bain is the current state representative in the state of Tennessee. She ran for
That's
the
right.
special election in Congress. Unfortunately, it wasn't the result that we all had hoped for. Because,
That's
like I
right.
said, even here in Kansas, I still watch Tennessee. That and I just love the state because I know there's a lot of potential in it. And
That's right.
one of the things that she was talking about doing, or is already introduced, is like pot for potholes,
Yep.
where that tax revenue would go through and help obviously get rid of the potholes, but it would also just kind of help the infrastructure in general. I'm in full support of this. I think it's an incredible way of maneuvering money to actually help the infrastructure, right? And
Absolutely.
so, what are your thoughts as far as that goes? And then, obviously, continue expanding it, but legalizing marijuana, as the state of Missouri has seen, it's 6% is what that tax is whenever it
Oh,
comes
okay.
to taxing it. Now, thinking about that, what else could that money be used for, in your opinion, across the state? Because it's Mike, literally, this is all common sense, but
Right, right. No, no, yeah, no, I appreciate these questions though. Yeah, I mean, obviously our roads are in dire need of repair.
Mhm.
They are awful. So yeah, I fully support Afton's pot for potholes, and I canvassed for Afton multiple times.
Mhm.
I was very excited for that race. But yeah, we also have a school voucher scam going on here in Tennessee. Our
There it is. I
governor,
was waiting for
Governor
that.
Lee, yeah, and it's atrocious. It's a rebate for rich people who already have their kids in private school. And just for your audience's reference, it's a $7,500 I got scholarship rebate. I don't know what they're voucher um, to offset the cost of private schools. Right there's not a private school in Tennessee that you could attend for $7,500. So what they're aiming for is this imaginary family that has enough money almost to send their kid to private school. They just need that $7,500 voucher, right, to make it happen. Meanwhile, that's a tiny percentage of the population. They've already shown that most of these vouchers are going to folks that make over six figures a year already. They can easily afford private school for their children. Um, and they're not holding these schools to the same testing standards that public schools are. So that it'd be a great time to open a private school here in Tennessee because it's kind of the Wild West right now. And what gets me is this the blatant corruption and the lack of any oversight. It's kind of like when Trump came in shooting all these executive orders. I kept waiting for an adult to stand up, right? And say, hey, you can't do this, right? Or we're not going to allow you to do this. And it never happened. And I keep waiting for it. Not that Afton hasn't been a very vocal in opposition, but I keep waiting for common sense to prevail in it, and it never does. And it's baffling to me. Tennessee is also the home of Jack Daniel's whiskey, right? So there is a huge liquor lobby here, and it doesn't take a lot of you know, common sense to figure out that they would be opposed to another vice coming in, right? So if we were to legalize marijuana, that would be potentially less revenue for them. So they have an agenda to keep marijuana out of the state. Meanwhile, you can go to Illinois, Missouri, any number of states that border Tennessee and legally purchase marijuana in that state where you would pay their taxes. They would gain all that revenue, and Tennessee loses out. It seems like a no-brainer to me. And with the federal reclassification, which, my God, how long has that taken? It's insane that heroin, I think it was on the same schedule as heroin, right? Like, there's obviously medicinal benefits to marijuana. You can look at veterans alone as a subset and see the obvious benefits. And I'm sure there's negatives, but they're minuscule in comparison. So yeah, I I want to repeal the voucher scam, but that's on a state level. So it's a little different thinking about it from a congressional candidate standpoint. I could draft legislation federally, but we need to solve our problems in our own house before we look anywhere else.
Exactly. And I want to pivot here for a second and talk about a very horrific um, mass shooting that happened in Nashville, Tennessee.
Sure.
And this was at the Covenant School that is in Nashville. And this was in 2023. And we just passed the anniversary of it. And I I remember hearing Gwen talk about how she felt that day. Obviously hearing this news, it travels fast, like the news travels extremely
Sure.
fast. But Tennessee, even before this and even after this, Tennessee is no stranger whenever it comes to gun violence. It's
That's
not.
right.
And I say this as a survivor of gun violence myself, that obviously thoughts and prayers is not working, and that is not the right response to address school shootings, to address shootings in our streets.
That's right.
Obviously, we need to address mental health. Is that the root cause of every single one of these? No. The root cause is it's easier to access a firearm than it is to access healthcare. It's easier to access a firearm than it is to access full funding of public schools. It's easier to
Absolutely.
access a firearm than it is to access affordable universal childcare. It's 2026, Mike, and
That's right.
we're still battling these same exact issues that generations before us were battling then. So, how do we address the gun violence epidemic and address it exactly what it is, which is a public health crisis? It
That's
needs
exactly
to be
right.
addressed and treated in the same way as like a deadly disease does. It needs to be addressed in that same way. It needs to be carefully focused because we have the gun lobby. The NRA runs rampant in the halls of Congress,
That's right.
and they profit every single time somebody is killed in this country. They make a profit off of that. We are literally a walking and talking dollar sign to them. And
That's right. We're the profit center
they
again.
push
Yeah.
back against everything. Universal background checks on all firearms and ammo sales. They push back on ERPOs, also known as a red flag law or extreme risk
That's right.
protection order. They push back on literally everything because they won't make a profit off of it. And these gun manufacturers continue, like I said, to profit off of us, off of violence. We are their money generator. Without that, they starve. Gee, it's like whenever you
Absolutely.
take away food from people, guess what happens? They starve. Maybe
That's
then
right.
they'll start to realize, hey, maybe what we're doing maybe actually isn't working. No, it's very obvious. How can you
Right.
call yourself a pro-life nation whenever you allow children to go to school? Oh, I'm sorry. It's not
Say it
pro-life.
again.
It's
Say it
called
again. No. Yeah.
hashtag pro-forced birth. And it's so we shouldn't even be having this conversation, but I'm glad we
No,
are.
it's absurd. It's
But
absurd. And it's upsetting that we even need to have it. No, you're right. And thank you for sharing that you're a victim of gun violence. That's, I take that very seriously. Like I mentioned, I was law enforcement, right? So I carried a gun every day. I carried a badge and a gun, and they are instruments of death. That's what they are. They're not. they are offensive weapons, and we tout them as defensive weapons. And I actually, with the Covenant shooting, I spoke to one of the people that trained this person that shot up the church, and I didn't realize this at the time. It was on a veterans retreat, and we were just kind of talking about what we do, and they were talking about working um, at a gun range, and that they had this person, and they were like, I think they were transgender, but they'd never shot a weapon before, and they came in and they took the pistol class, the basic pistol class, and then signed up for the advanced pistol class. And like, as this guy's telling me, I was like, oh, that's a red flag, right? Like, and then he said, and then they signed up for like the long rifle class, and I was like, okay, like what, I'm looking around the room like, y'all, that doesn't freak y'all out that this person is this eager? And lo and behold, it was the shooter, and I was like, oh my god, man, like, obviously, well, how did you not see these red flags? Like, I can pick it up in the story that you're telling me. And once again, we have the money, we don't have the values. We are being, and you mentioned it, we are being lobbied hard by the NRA, and what a vile and corrupt organization that is. I listened to a podcast a few years ago about just the chaos, the internal chaos of the NRA. But I know the answer to fighting a fire is not more fire, right? The answer to gun violence is not more guns. It's a myriad of things, as you mentioned. It's mental health, right? And just the ease of access to buy a weapon. We have what's known as the gun show loophole. And I wrote a Substack about this after the shooting at the, or whatever the hell that was, at the Correspondence Dinner. You could walk in and purchase a gun and walk out with it. And this person doesn't know you from Adam. My wife, when we were dating, she worked at Academy Sports and Outdoors. You might be familiar with it, but it's not a national chain, but it's a sporting goods store. And she worked the gun counter, and she would tell me, this person came in, and we couldn't verify. They didn't put their whole middle name or something, right? And the system kicked it back, and they had to wait. And I was like, okay, well, good. I'm glad that there's that level of checks and balances on this, because again, these are these are deadly weapons. I don't want just some random person being able to get these. But I think it's become such a symbol of our country, unfortunately. I mean, yeah, it's 2026. We've had more mass shootings than any other nation on this planet, and yet we can't seem to figure it out. And I really wish I knew the answer to this, but I think, like you mentioned, treating it like a disease, like an epidemic, which it very much is,
And
and
it leaves a lot.
targeting.
Yes, 100%. And it hits disproportionately from marginalized communities. And
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
it hits really extremely hard. And treating it as a public health crisis, it sets the standard and it sets the tone. And one thing that I do, I have my own like critiques of the Biden Harris administration, or yeah, Biden Harris administration.
Sure,
But I will tell you this, I do like the fact that the Office of Gun Violence Prevention was created for the very first time.
that's right.
I love that. It's been dismantled since, but I do love
Right.
the fact that it was created, because it's like, okay, maybe we can actually get to a point where we recognize exactly what this is. And
Right.
like I said, it was dismantled, but I do feel a sense of hope that people are starting to recognize and treat it exactly what, I know it as and what I see. I mean, you can go on Google and you can type in, shootings, and you can just see it all across the country. There's a organization that is kind of like tracking it a little bit. And what they
Mm,
do is called the Gun Violence Archive. and they go through and
Oh my
keep
goodness.
like tabs of like everything that goes on. And they've been doing this for several years now. And whenever it comes to gun violence, in the country, they report that mass shootings from 2015 was 332. 2024 was 503.
Jeez.
And we're expecting that 2026 is obviously going to be off the rockers even further. And they've been collecting data since like 2013, and like 2015 was
Mm,
their first like report and such. Um, Thinking about this and then also tying it into money and politics. So
yeah.
obviously we see a lot of influence. We see a lot of, like you were talking about earlier about PAC money. We see a lot of this. And, what are your thoughts as far as how do we go about getting money out of politics? Obviously, and I'm
Great
asking
question.
all the candidates this is, all the ones that are running for federal office. But actually, money in politics actually affects every election. It really does.
It sure does. Yeah.
But I want to hit, since you're a congressional candidate, I want to hit on federally. So if you're older than 2010, you're older than Citizens United versus the FEC.
Sure.
And thinking about this, what are some of those steps that we can take to get money out of politics? Because we see an APAC influence, we see a lot. There's
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
lot that goes into it. But what are some of those steps that we can take in your opinion and on your platform and, just everything that you care about? What are some of those steps that we can take to get money out of politics in your opinion?
Sure. Yeah, I think it was Robin Williams that said, if politicians were like NASCAR's drivers and they had to wear their sponsors all over their suit, then we would know who paid for them, right? And it's a joke, but I really think that we need to do something like that. Like these are all the people that have bought this guy, right? Um, it's insane, and I want to overturn Citizens United. I think that's an easy win. It it does not serve the people, right? It serves the elites and these lobbyists. Um, it's insane the amount of money in campaigns. I am all about campaign finance reform, and for me, a grassroots candidate who's refusing APAC support, I don't even want to consider it. I'm at a significant disadvantage to my competitors. I don't know that any of the Democratic candidates are going to take any huge PAC money, but the GOP candidates already have millions in their coffers already. And it puts us at a substantial disadvantage. I was appalled that money played such a role in campaigning. I was naive about that, and it's insane to me what a factor um, funding is in a campaign, and it should not be that way at all. And it doesn't need to be that way. We have expenses, but nowhere near millions of dollars. The other thing is, as a congressional member, we make $174,000 a year, which is nothing to sneeze at, right? I mean, that's damn good money. But we shouldn't be millionaires, right? Walking out of there, unless you were a millionaire coming in. You shouldn't have these career politicians that are, obviously on the know of inside trading. We need to definitely end that. I mentioned it. I am for transparency and accountability. I'm a public servant. When I am elected, I work for the people of this district, and they should know what I'm up to. They should know who's paying me. They should know what my agendas are, and that's something that I hope to make more of a standard when I come in. I'm going to hold monthly town halls, right? So I'll be very vocal about what's going on, and I'm going to be very vocal about The NRA tried to offer me this much amount, right, to vote on this bill. I'm not going to take it, but just so you know, that's what happened. And I'm I'm probably not going to make a lot of friends in Washington D.C., but that's I'm not running to make friends.
No, exactly. And you're running to represent the people, like you said, in your district. And it doesn't matter, what decision you do, it's going to impact not only your constituents, but it's also going to impact the entire country because
That's right.
people forget that we do have checks and balances. People, I mean, allegedly, but
Right. Right.
um, I learned that in school, and I'm not seeing that right now. I'm not seeing it.
Exactly.
I'm not seeing Congress having a spine and having a backbone, and that's on both sides of the aisle. I do not
I
believe that the
completely
current
agree.
I do not believe that the current leadership, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, are not meeting the moment, not
Absolutely.
holding the line. They're beginning to buckle. That is not leadership. That is the direct influence of money in politics. That is exactly what this issue is. And
That's
until
exactly
we
right.
address it and recognize the actual issues, I mean, you have Cory Booker that's literally on a book tour. What are you
Right.
doing?
He's a celebrity.
What are you doing?
That's
Like,
right. Yeah. And I mean,
who?
you shouldn't run for this office for notoriety or to become famous. I mean, this should not be a glamorous position. It's a public servant position. Yeah, I mean, and you kind of touched on it before. I'm running as a progressive Democrat, but that doesn't mean that I agree with everything that Democrats have done the last 15, 20 years. In fact, I adamantly oppose a lot of the things that they've done. I was not a
Or
Hillary
the lack
Clinton
thereof.
fan. Absolutely. I thought Hillary Clinton was an awful choice. I wasn't a huge Joe Biden fan, quite honestly. I voted for him and I voted for Kamala Harris, but how did we not realize that Joe Biden was going to be 4 years older during his next term? How did we not have anyone in place to run and then to scramble as a party and put our VP up? She had never been elected, right? I mean, she was on his ticket, but she had never won an election by herself to be a presidential candidate. It just we I'm sure you saw the artwork of all the red fingers pointing in the one direction, right? And then all the blue fingers pointing everywhere. And that's a perfect analogy for how we are. As a Democratic Party, we are so unorganized. We are so unorganized, and it shouldn't take much to get us on the same page. And I keep waiting for the adult to show up, and no one has.
I have to agree with you on a lot of what you just said. One thing that I do want to point out here is she was elected as Attorney General of California. And
Okay, fair
then
enough. I take it back.
shortly after that, she became a U.S. Senator. But leading from 2004 to 2011, she was the District Attorney of San Francisco. So I just wanted to kind of like point that out. Like,
Sure, fair enough.
I agree entirely. But just wanted to kind of like pinpoint that and just talk about that. She got her start prosecuting like childhood sexual abuse. One of her, and this is not me going to bat for her by any stretch. I think they can do better, and I know they can do better. But I'm just
Mm,
stating that she did get her start like advocating for survivors' voices, and that's one of her
yeah,
strongest like standpoints is
sure,
like gun violence prevention, like reproductive rights, and like survivors. That is what
absolutely.
that is why I voted for her in 2024. That's the exact reason why I did that because I believed she would represent me, like my voice as a
That's
survivor.
right.
Now, I would have rather have fought her on like 3 to 4, 5 or 6 issues versus like thousands and thousands of issues. It's one of those. I know we deserve better. I want to
That's
see
right.
people fight for the disabled community, like my mom. I've
Mm.
talked about my mom numerous times on this podcast, but yesterday marked the 1 year since she was diagnosed with cervical cancer.
Oh my
And
goodness.
luckily, the cancer is out of her body now. All of the treatments worked, but
That's amazing.
I can't help but think about the years of gaslighting from medical providers of what she faced. And it's a reality in which communities all across the country are disproportionately affected by, and especially in our rural areas,
That's right.
especially in those very rural and like those red gerrymandered areas. Kansas is
Mm,
no stranger to whenever it comes to eliminating healthcare. Governor Sam Brownback was notorious in destroying the state's economy, the healthcare system, the mental health system, and public education.
oh
And
gosh.
the super majority of the GOP in both, my home state of Missouri, in Kansas, and Tennessee is no stranger to this either. And
That's
then we
right.
also look at Texas. We look at Indiana. I just interviewed a congressional candidate running in Indiana against Victoria Spartz, who is
Mm,
literally an APAC shill, like literally to the T. And then
yeah.
also talking to people that are in Georgia that's running for office. Aaron Baker is running for House District 51 in Georgia to
Right.
represent the LGBTQ plus community. And she would literally break history.
Right.
But
Right.
it goes beyond it goes beyond just elections because it also comes down to the policies. Who are they going to represent? I agree with your statement, bringing up the Robin Williams, and
Oh, sure. Yeah.
he knew best. He did, and I tell you what, we need more people like Robin Williams in this world. I was so
Mm,
saddened whenever I learned that he passed away and died by
yeah.
suicide. That literally hit me to a T.
Same.
And
Yeah.
that was a very dark day in our country, is when we learned about
Mm,
his death. And also, growing up on Mr. Rogers, learning about
that's
the
right.
helpers. We see Miss Rachel. We
I
see what Miss
love it.
Rachel's doing
I
now.
love it.
And, a little bit of a side note, she follows us, but who's paying
Hey,
attention?
fantastic.
Um, but I literally bawled on my way over to my mom's whenever I saw, because get these
That's amazing.
notifications, and I was like, holy shit. I was
Right.
just talking about her. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God. And I called my mom and I was like, oh my God, guess what? She's like,
I couldn't imagine someone, how that's like the proudest I would be, right? Like Miss Rachel follows you, right? It's like,
like,
oh, I've made it.
now let's pivot. Speaking of Miss Rachel, she's advocating for children. She's
Mm,
watching like Gaza, she's watching, Sudan and
yeah,
Congo and all of these children. But she's also really focused on what's happening here. And let's dive into this for a second.
sure.
What has ICE and DHS looked like? I know, okay, Memphis is a
Mm,
target for the Trump administration. Okay.
that's right.
Now, they stated that they created this task force to kind of go in and like quote unquote like clean up crime. But the state, like even like advocates on the ground are saying that's not what they're doing. But just the same way as like these ICE agents are running around our communities, sweeping
That's
people
right.
off the streets and sending them to these, well, for lack of a better term, these concentration camps. Literally, exactly what it is.
That's
Um,
exactly what it does. Yeah.
and thinking about this, what has ICE and DHS looked like in your district, and what are you seeing as far as the community kind of like rising up? Now, like I said, my
Mm,
co-founder is based in Nashville. She's spoke and she's performed at some of the No Kings protests that have gone on. She performed at the Canna Fest that most recently, like a couple weekends ago.
mm.
But just thinking about like ICE and DHS, what are your thoughts on this? How do we address it, and what has it looked like in your district?
Yeah. So we haven't had a ton in my district. Part of it is Nashville and Cookeville. It's a large university town. There has been some activity there, but we have an excellent network of folks. So some of the guys that own the Mexican restaurants here, they heard ICE was in town. They closed shop. No one went in. They didn't know what was going on. My campaign manager, Hillary Huddleston, actually drove some of them home so that they wouldn't be arrested. It was very surreal. We haven't seen the amount of ICE activity that some of the other places have, but that's not to say that. they're not running rampant. I remember thinking that DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, was something to be proud of, right? And remember, it came around after September 11th with the intention of, never again, right? What we have now is the bastardization of that very principle. This is equivalent to the brown shirts in Nazi Germany. I mean, this is Trump's private militia, is what it is, and they are running rampant, targeting brown, black, listening for accents. I mean, if you don't look like Stephen Miller, you're a target. Which God help us all. Um, we watched Alex Preddy and Renee Good get murdered. My sons watched them get murdered. My daughter watched them get murdered in the streets, right? And I mentioned I was law enforcement. I had to wear a badge. I had to wear a name tag. I had to wear a uniform. During COVID, we had to wear a face mask, but never to obscure my face, never to hide from the public. ICE, DHS, state parks, all public servants. We all work for the public. We are accountable to the public. I am hesitant to say I want to abolish ICE, and I know that's not necessarily a popular statement. I was stationed in Corpus Christi, Texas, and we need border security. I mean, that's no doubt. We need border security. We need a tight border, but what we need more than that is a path to citizenship. Right now, it's just nebulous. There's no distinct path to citizenship unless you're rich and white and from South Africa. But these folks, I mentioned at the beginning, I worked at Purdue Chicken. I worked with a ton of Latin Americans there, many of them straight from Mexico, and they are the hardest working people I've ever met in my life. They were so adamant about not being in trouble, right? Like they would drive under the speed limit. They wouldn't have wild house parties. They would go home, they would come back, they would work because they were there illegally, right? By the letter of the law, but they brought nothing but benefit to the community. They paid taxes. They paid, taxes when they would purchase something. They got none of that benefit back. They didn't have insurance. They didn't have anything like that. So why would they come here, right? They were here to make a better life for their family. All right, now think about that. What would you do to give your family a better life? Would you cross an imaginary border? Right? Would you trust a guy to travel you through the desert for miles and miles and miles? I would do anything I could to protect my family. And I'm assuming that that's what they're doing. And not to say that there aren't murderers and rapists like Trump likes to say coming across the border. Any subset of any group of folks, you're going to have people that are deranged, shall we say. It's not an affliction for South Central America that they're all murderers and rapists. Again, some of the best quality people I've ever met in my life. I want to defund ICE specifically, get the Department of Homeland Security back to its original mission of securing the homeland, and just again get to some semblance of responsibility. It's embarrassing, and maybe that's not the right word, but as a former law enforcement officer, to see what's going on, it's just catastrophic. I can't think of another way to say it. It's worst case scenario, and we all witnessed it, right? But then to be gaslit by the president, by his administration, by high-ranking officials in the FBI to say, no, that's not what happened. It's not what you saw. How are you going to tell me what I saw? I watched it happen. That's your interpretation of this. I'm glad that the waters have calmed somewhat, especially in Minnesota. But what did they accomplish there? Nothing. They just divided this country even more at a time where division is as deep as it's ever been. And so, yeah, not a big fan of the current ICE agency as it stands, and would definitely support defunding them. And I don't know that overhaul would work. It might be the case that we need to abolish that agency and start fresh because you have too many bad apples all put together. And again, as a law enforcement officer, I know it's you got a lot of alpha males, quote unquote, and they're not going to back down, especially from a civilian, a woman, a guy on the street telling them they can and can't do something. There's a lot of fragile egos in law enforcement, and unfortunately, that's what you get.
You said that absolutely correctly, and I resonate with that very deeply. The department in which the city my mom lives in, which is in Johnson County, Kansas, and
Hmm.
we have one of the worst police departments I've probably ever seen. I oh, it goes deep and it's bad. And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not the only one that recognizes this. I'm not the only one. Everybody around here, like on both sides of the aisle, this department is literally one of the worst that anybody could ever probably interact with. They
Hmm.
are absolutely terrible. They literally run around with their little guns and their badges, and oh, I can pop off here, but we don't have time to get into that.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
but
Well, again, it's a lack of accountability, right? If there were
yes,
any oversight or
yes.
accountability, that would stop that problem.
And keep in mind, I'm from the Kansas City metro area. And whenever, first of all, Kansas City is one of the biggest cities in the country, really, like population wise and just like the mile wise, how big it is, etc.
Hmm.
But thinking about the police department specifically, it is currently not under local control. It is under the governor's control. A
Oh,
governor
it is
should not have any control over any police department, period. Because with due respect, I don't trust that damn governor.
absolutely not.
He is
Yeah, that's
a
the epitome of checks and balances. I mean, that's
yeah,
hmm.
and the governor's office appoints people to the police board,
Oh, good lord.
which means if it's a GOP administration, it's going to be predominantly conservative people being appointed to that board. If it's Democratic, it doesn't represent the people, is what I'm getting at. This is
That's
not a
right.
red versus blue. This is not a left versus right. I say that as a Democratic socialist myself, but
Hmm.
it's just we have so many issues that we need to address, and we need to get people like you in Congress. I fully believe that you are the exact thing that Tennessee needs, in that in your district. I mean, Tennessee, whenever it comes down to it. So I pulled up from US News, and the population is over 7 million. The median income is 41,556. I'm not sure when these are from. Obviously, they could be skewed like, a little bit.
Hmm.
Whenever it comes to crime and corrections, it ranks number 45. Economy, number 24. Education, number 31. Fiscal stability, number 7. Healthcare, 41. Infrastructure, 23. Natural
Hmm.
environment, 34. Opportunity, 22. Overall rank is number 32. So there's a
Yeah,
lot of work to do. There
there's a
is.
lot of work to do.
There
That's
are
right.
worse states whenever it comes to rankings. There's better states whenever it comes to ranking, but even in the
Sure.
most, like, quote unquote blue states or like progressive states, there is still things that people don't recognize that still go on behind closed doors that doesn't meet the public, right? And there
Absolutely.
is still a lot of loopholes in a lot of the laws that even do pass.
Absolutely.
And it's just, yeah, there's a lot of work to do, but we love democracy and it's worth fighting for. But
That's right. That's right.
my next thing I wanted to talk to you about was the ease of accessibility. And I know on your platform you talk about Mr. Rogers, and
Hmm.
I was wondering, I didn't read this part of your platform just yet, but about accessibility. So obviously we have the ADA.
Hmm.
Okay, we have We have, and it goes beyond just people with disabilities because how do we make voting more accessible? How do we make accessing healthcare more accessible for veterans? This is
Sure.
directly off your platform. Expand the House of Representatives because currently and Mr. B is endorsing candidates, first of
He's
all.
endorsed me. That's right.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
getting there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So
My fellow Kansan is doing some incredible work.
sure
And
is. Yeah.
he's endorsing these candidates, like you said yourself, and uncapping the House because the current cap is 435. That does not represent the people. That's not democracy. That's
That's
controlled
right.
opposition. And that's literally
That's
what that
exactly
is.
right. That's exactly right.
Whenever it comes to
That's
uncapping the House, what do you believe? This will be the last question, and then we'll wrap up. But what do you believe that would actually look like? Because a current representative represents over 700 to 800,000 people.
that's insane, right?
I'm thinking about, and I've mentioned this before, but I'm thinking about my email, right? I'm thinking about the phone calls. I'm think that has to be astronomically, well, needless to say, it's batshit crazy, literally. Um,
Right. Right.
but what do you think would happen if we uncap the house? And obviously, there's a lot of work to get to before we get to this point, because I
Hmm.
do worry about the money being in politics. I do worry about that because it's like,
Sure.
yeah, it sounds good, but that also kind of leads to a lot of questions if we don't get people like you elected, or we don't get people that have the similar values as you do, and a lot of the other
Hmm.
candidates. It leads to more of that money in politics, and it leads to more corruption. But obviously, we need to address things as they come up, and these have been battles for many, many years. But what would that look like with expanding the House, and what would that do for democracy and representing the actual people versus these, private entities, the corporations, the PACs, APAC, all of this influence in our current systems?
Yeah, I think they've had it really well for a long time as far as being a congressman or congressperson.
They've gotten
Y-
comfortable.
that's right. Yeah, they're complacent, right? And with complacency, you get negative return. You mentioned it's like one per 70, 80,000 people. I mean, that's just absurd, right? Even if I had a staff of people working for me, we're
Mhm.
still not going to be able to listen to every constituent or touch on every need. And that's literally the job that I'm applying for. Um, so yeah, I fully understand the implication of uncapping the House. It was an issue I was aware of, but I hadn't really dived in until Mr. Beats reached, or until I saw his post about it. And again, it just seems common sense, right? And I considered at one point making that sort of the foundation of my campaign. I'm the common sense candidate, but that might mean different things to different people, right? So, um, uncapping the House, this seems like a no-brainer. Bring more representation to the people. There is the chance that, like you mentioned, that we vote in more terrible people, and then it kind of backfires. But at the very least, even if that happens, you'll have that ratio of representative to constituents will be less, right? So I would hope, just like in when you look at the education system, the ratio from teacher to student, that's a big factor in determining success of that student of the school and just in general their education. And just carry that over to representation here. It's not that we would be teaching these folks hands on every day like a teacher does, but one person trying to represent 70,000 people, that's absurd. If we were to start from scratch and pitch that idea, no one would go for that. So yeah, I mean, I'm like I said, this district that I'm wanting to represent is 19 counties in Tennessee. And Tennessee is a huge state. We're not very tall north and south, but east and west, it takes longer. Jerry Green mentioned this. She drove from Memphis to Knoxville or to Bristol, Tennessee, one extreme to the other. It would have been closer for her to drive to Canada from Memphis than it was to Bristol. just to give you an idea of how big the state is. And you're asking one person to represent 19 counties. That's just not feasible. That's not even public service. That's pandering. That's just an illusion of representation. I have never spoken to my representative. I've never been in the same room as him. I've never seen him in person. Not for lack of trying. I mean, I've actively tried to get in touch with this person. Even events where I'm campaigning, right? He's not there. So if he can't even come to an event to campaign for himself, how am I going to trust him to represent my best interest, right? Undoubtedly, this man has an agenda. He's a millionaire, right? He is bought and paid for. And I think true representation comes from the people. It's one of the reasons I want to hold monthly town halls, preferably in person, but virtual if necessary, because I can't represent you if I don't know what problems you're facing. And I don't presume to have all the answers. I want to hear from folks. And another way I'm going to accomplish that is this website that we're building. It's Your Voice TN-06. And when you log on, there'll be an option to put your zip code in, right, to verify that you're a member of the congressional district. And then you'll see any legislation that has come up for me to vote on in its original form. And then there'll be a section of layman's terms. This is what this legislation actually says. This is what's hidden in it, right? On page 476, they slip this in there. And then there'll be the option for you to tell me whether you think I should vote in support or against. And that's going to be real-time feedback from constituents through this website. I am kind of baffled that no one has implemented this yet. I don't know how else you could hear from your constituents other than doing these town halls and having a venue for them to contact you. And you mentioned your email, right? Could you imagine receiving email, even if only 10%, right? That's still 7,000 people. That's a crazy amount of emails. And I'm sure you've met these people that email their representative every day, right? Or call them every day. I was one of them for the longest time. Maybe that's why John Rose never answered his phone, because he was too busy representing all the other folks. But we need true representation in this country, and right now we don't have it. So uncapping the House is one way to move us in the right direction.
And speaking of moving us in the right direction, this is my last question to you. How can people contribute to your campaign and uplift the work that you are doing to get you across that finish line?
Yeah, thank you. So Croley for Congress is my website. My last name is spelled Croley. My joke is I'm saving the W for November, right? Because most people throw a W in there. And I've been called Corley, Conley, Crowley my whole life. So I answer to pretty much everything. But Croley for Congress, CROLEYFOR Congress is my website. And you can find me on every social media platform except for X.
Perfect. All right, Mike, thank you so much for tuning in from Tennessee, the 6th Congressional District. And again, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I cannot wait to see what happens with your primary. Speaking of which, when is your primary?
It's August.
Perfect. So it's got a little bit of time, but it's going to be
yep.
here before you know it. I turned 30 years old on August 9th. August is a good
August
is a good month.
Yeah, that's my daughter's birthday month also. Yeah, awesome.
All right, Mike, thank you so much. Please take it easy, okay?
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.